Time for another edition of the World Edition, and we're going to see what's happening in the world. Actually, China and the Philippines are having a dispute over a grounded warship, and that is one of the things that we are seeing in the news. So there is definitely tensions in that part of the world. And of course, there is a 2 day Amazon summit set to focus on climate change and human rights. Some people are wondering, at least that's what a article in the BBC said, whether carbon credits are going to be a land grab or the Amazon's future. So I'm sure that folks may have some thoughts about that. Amazon's chief, Rayoni, is urging for stronger forest preservation. And I do remember from a conversation in a room in Clubhouse some time back that was a conversation, and there was actually a woman that was involved in that. And I may be reaching out to her to see if she wants to come on the show, since I think that she actually lives in the Amazon, if I remember correctly, in that space. Thousands in Haiti are marching to demand safety from the violent gangs that are in that area, and kidnapping of children and women are spiking at an alarming rate in Haiti. Thousands of protesters are marching in that Caribbean country against gang violence, and that is something that is going on in that part of the world. So there's a lot of things that are happening in various parts of the world. As a matter of fact, and this is an issue that folks have been concerned about in the U.S. as well, but in the U.K., cyber attacks on U.K.'s electoral registers are revealed. So millions of UK voters' data is accessible in a cyber attack, says their electoral commission. So they said that they have been hacked by hostile actors. So that is something that I'm sure is going to cause concerns, not just there in the UK, but around the world as well. Niger coup leader is refusing to let senior U.S. diplomats meet with that particular nation's president. So that is something that is going on. And I know that, as we've said before, the Wagner Group is taking advantage of a lot of places that are in turmoil, and that is something that Antonio Blinken is saying. He is saying that the Wagner Group is taking advantage of the instability. And definitely another thing that some people are wondering, and this is an article that I saw in South China Morning Post, is why China should care about French interest in Africa and the Pacific. But we don't know that those particular folks in China are definitely looking at a lot of the world and having their own thoughts as to their own influence on the various parts of the world and all along those lines. July, which was last month, hit a crucial warming threshold that scientists have warned the world should stay under. So July broke the record for the Earth's hottest ever months. And of course, there is some severe weather that is hitting the United States on this particular day, and it is impacting a lot of folks throughout the country and all in that space. But severe weather isn't just hitting us, it's hitting other parts of the world as well, because South Korea has evacuated tens of thousands of scouts ahead of the typhoon that is heading in that direction. And if I'm remembering correctly, the World Scout Jamboree is going on, which is why all of those scouts are being relocated, and hopefully someplace that is a lot safer than in the track of a typhoon storm and all in that kind of space. China and Russia are holding a call after the Saudi peace talks over the Ukraine excluded Moscow. So China is reassuring Russia on Ukraine after meeting on how to end the war. China is assuring Russia it remains impartial on the Ukraine war after attending the Saudi peace talks. So that is something that is going on. And I know that if Sasha comes in, he may have some thoughts about China's role in that particular conflict, as well as what India should be doing as well. And there was an article about a American billionaire spreading Chinese propaganda in India and abroad. So that is something else that we see going on, is folks that talk about the various ways of freedom of speech and what you should be allowed to say or not allowed to say in that space. And definitely that is something that we are seeing in the world. And by the way, a Ukrainian woman has been detained in a plot to assassinate Zelensky. So that is something I think I mentioned yesterday, but that is something that is definitely going on. And in sad news for those of you that are music fans, as I mentioned, or somebody mentioned, that a musical star had passed away not that long ago, that being Sinead O'Connor. And definitely hundreds gathered to say goodbye to Sinead O'Connor at a funeral procession there in Ireland. So she was definitely not just known and loved here in the US, but in other parts of the world as well, including her home area of Ireland. And she definitely was known for speaking out on some topics and things along those lines. So she was definitely one of those artists that like to speak her mind about certain issues and certain causes as well. And then Britain is moving its first migrants to a barge in Dorset. So that is something that's going on. And some people are calling this the controversial death trap housing barge. And maybe folks will have some thoughts about that as well when we get to the folks that are with me and all in that space. Speaking of China, the reason behind the heavy rainfall in China that broke the record of 140 years. So apparently there's some major weather that is going on in that part of the world, as well as deadly floods have hit China's major grain producing region, fueling food security concerns. So whenever this weather hits or whenever things like a war happens, there are concerns about what is going on and how it will impact the food delivery, not just in the country that is hit, but also around the world as well. And that is some of the things that I'm seeing. I could get to some US items, and I may do that in a minute as well. But I definitely saw a lot of things that were taking place and got to a few of those, including one that is sad, but also kind of sublime is the word I might use, and all in that space. So before I get to the US one, there was apparently an Italian man that was crushed to death by a falling cheese wheels. So the cheese wheels fell, and this particular gentleman was crushed to death by that particular situation, and all along those lines. Getting to the news around the United States, and then, like I said, I'll bring in Shaquille and Lee Newton Rhodes. Definitely have questions to them about the thoughts around security and election security, because I know that was an issue here in the U.S. and apparently it has hit the folks there in Britain as well. Montgomery police, speaking of stuff in the United States, have issued warrants after a massive brawl on an Alabama riverfront dock. So they are the mayor of that particular city has says outbreaks of violence is something that shouldn't have happened, and WEE style mayhem was caught on camera with punches thrown, hair pulled, and chairs used. So there was some sort of brawl that was going on in that area. And speaking of brawls and people that have different opinions, the Ohio ballot election has set the stage for a major abortion fight in November. So that is something that is going on. And they're saying that the Ohio special elections may be crucial in the abortion fight. So Ohio sees a massive voter turnout on the GOP ballot question to protect the state constitution from what they feel are liberal activists, and all in that space. So the teenage cousin, in another story, of the Uvalde school shooter is arrested, accused of threatening to do the same thing to another school. So that is something else that we are seeing. So despite what happened with his cousin, it looks like he has gone and made a similar threat. So we may get into some conversations around gun violence and gun security and all in that space as well. And it looks like the U.S. Coast Guard has rescued Charles Gregory from a partially submerged boat after he was stranded for 2 days in the small boat off the coast of Florida. So he was rescued after 35 hours in the sea. So definitely glad that he was able to survive that ordeal, and all in that kind of way, and all in that space. And last but not least, and then we'll get to the conversation around the news and all. I got two stories, one about Biden and one about Trump, but apparently Biden is creating a new national monument near the Grand Canyon. So he is heading in that way to create this new national monument, and we'll have to see what that national monument is for. And Trump lawyers are arguing protective order would violate his free speech rights. So he is arguing arguing that against more restrictive rules over evidence in the 2020 election interference case. And they're saying that Trump's defense lawyer has given Jack Smith a roadmap of what they intend to argue at the trial. And looks like there's been a strike. I know there was the things that were going on in Canada and in other parts of the world, but it looks like one has hit the Los Angeles as well, because thousands of Los Angeles city workers have walked off the job for 24 hours, alleging unfair labor situations and all in that kind of way. So we know what's going on with Hollywood, but apparently there is also now Los Angeles city workers on strike as well. And then one of the things that they're protesting is staffing shortages. So they began a one-day strike, and there'll be some serious service disruptions for residents in that particular large city in the United States and all along those lines. So I'm going to bring different folks into the discussion. Like I said, I've got definitely Shaquille, we've got Lee Newton Rhodes, we've got Toby, we've got other folks that are here as well. And I guess one of the first questions that I've got to ask everybody, as I gave this long things of some of the things that were going on in the world, is should we be concerned about cybersecurity? So that's the first thing that I came across, was the whole thing around London and what's going on in London and all along those lines, because definitely that is something that I'm sure people are concerned about. It was part of the discussions in the United States, and it may be part of the discussions in other places as well. So, Lee, any thoughts around cybersecurity and whether we should be concerned about this and all along those lines? So, any take on this at all?
All right, Mark, I don't understand the question. Of course, we'd be concerned about all security, especially cybersecurity. You know, on the internet, military, banking. Am I missing the importance of this? Jacoby, what's your take on that? You're muted.
Yeah.
Jacoby, you're muted.
Yeah, something's going on with your computer. So, can we hear you now? Yeah, still don't hear you. Oh, he's going to make an adjustment.
You look great, Jacoby. I just can't hear you.
Well, you know, I had to I had the other part muted. I was streaming last night and I forgot to unmute it. But yeah, you're spot on, Lee. We need to be worried about cybersecurity, especially. I mean, that everything we do is digital. We're online right now. So yeah, cybersecurity is huge. And anybody who gets the upper hand on that, bye-bye to your banking. Bye-bye to whatever secrets you got on any computer connected to the internet and cell phones, everything and anything. Yeah, cybersecurity is huge.
But to both of you and Lee, what can we do about it? Because like I said, there was the whole accusations around folks saying that Russia hacked into the U.S. System. That were whether that was true or not, and that was accusations that were both during the last election, and if I remember correctly, the election before that as well. And then, of course, now we're seeing that somebody has hacked into London, and I'm sure there have been even accusations around India and a number of other places. So sometimes these are folks that we don't even know where they're coming from. You just mentioned to Toby the hacking that can go on in your home, and a lot of times you don't even know where that is coming from. So what can we do about that in any form or fashion?
Well, one thing I think, one thing that we have to do is deal with not only the companies themselves, from Google to the big businesses that have all the that have a lot of these servers that people are running off of. But one thing that if I remember, the FBI was doing from dealing with is it the black site hackers? I think that they pulled from. I mean, they'll pull from different hacking organizations. But yeah, you've got to plan. You've got to prepare. You've got to all the new updates dealing with AI. People have been using bots for a very long time to hack into different places. Those antivirus or the malware or antivirus programs that you accidentally pick up and you're like, where did this come from? You know what that is? It's the same thing of the cyber hackers. When you click on a website that, a pop-up pops up and, something in the background you don't even know that's running. Yeah, that little JavaScript is now, whatever script is in the background, You click on it accidentally, and hey, guess what? You have something on your computer. I mean, that's all examples of, the root of the simple malware that's out there. But that comes from programmers, and those programmers practice these things, and those hackers take on these challenges of hacking different sites. Target was hacked years ago, and they took credit cards. If you guys remember that story, they took, 40 million credit card users' information. So the only thing to do, you've got to keep up with the times. You've got to hire the young individuals who are in the programming. Can't continue to hire a lot of the individuals that see the old programming. I mean, some, yes, but a lot of the new programs, you got to understand AI. A lot of the older programmers, some of the older programmers don't understand AI. A lot of them do, not saying all of them don't, but some of them stick with what they know and stay with what they know. I mean, that's what we always do. But yeah.
Toby, should companies not rely on the American government, the federal government, to protect the internet and to protect just actors, from foreign governments or terrorists?
I mean, we can, but the thing is, it's impossible for the government itself to protect the open internet from hackers. We have to be honest about that. We can ask for regulations and ask for some type of support, but to expect that the government is going to regulate the internet to a point where we won't have hackers and stuff like that, that's impossible. That's a fictional idea. Even in China, where they regulate the speech, even in North Korea, where they regulate the internet itself on speech and everything, they have hackers. So you can't, you can put in regulations, you can make sure that it's a free open internet, and you can have, whatever out there from speech to anything and everything. But you've got to have buy-in by companies. You've got to have buy-in by other individuals, like Verizon to AT&T to Google to Spectrum to whoever runs the lines, the fiber optic lines. You got to have buy-in by those people to actually help out as well. So yeah, the government can try and bring them together, but for the government to protect us like that, no, it's never going to happen.
But along
Mark,
those
the
lines,
unfortunate thing with this is also frequently we don't find out till after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the sad part about that is, that's just the reality. Think about when something pops up on your computer that you've never seen before. You're like, okay, that's nothing. And then 10 days later, now you got 2 more pop-ups. Okay, something's weird. That's nothing still. And then 4 or 5. So it's the same thing that happens at home, but we're expecting a preemptive way to stop hacking, which is impossible. Finding out a month later. Okay, well, yeah, okay. We can understand why you found out a month later, because thinking about how the internet runs, we can't really, it's just about being honest and being realistic about where we live and how we live. Technology we don't have what's that Tom Cruise movie where you can predict, what was it called? You can predict the future or predict criminals or predict that, oh, well, this is going to happen. No, that ain't happening.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. But one of the things I was curious about, and maybe both of you have a thought about this and everything, is this notion of the fact that so many of these hackers it kind of like comes back to fiction and everything, but they are made up of very nefarious individuals, but they're very much in various parts of the country. And I'm sure that the CIA and the FBI and a number of other agencies are trying to figure out who they are. But I'm thinking that they are always not in one location, or that they're not always in the same place and everything along those lines. So we talk about organizations and how much reach they have, whether that be the Chinese or the folks there in some of the Middle Eastern terrorist groups, but I would think that hackers have an even greater reach and an even greater danger, because one of them may be in England, another one may be in India, another one may be in Uganda. They may be in various places, but they have this whole web of connections that we may not know where they are coming from, because they may be communicating with each other, maybe even communicating with each other using the technology that we don't totally understand, including some of those in our military complex. But Jacoby and Lee, do you have any thoughts around that? Because that's one of the fears that I hear, is that folks are concerned that they don't even have a handle on where these hackers are coming from.
They sell, I mean, people buy it to, what is it? You can get, what is it?
To hide your location?
Yeah, the virtual IPs and everything. I forget the name of it right now. But yeah, so you can hop your location anywhere you want to. Like if you go into Canada and you want to watch HBO or Max, you can't. But if you hop your location, where it changes your IP address location from inside of Canada to inside of the US, guess what? You can now watch videos on Max by doing that. VPN, that's what it is. So you can, it's virtual private network. So basically you can hop your location. Yeah, he's going crazy now. But you can hop your location to different areas across the globe. So to find somebody based on an email address or based on an IP address, if it's a hacker, it's going to be almost impossible, because the footprints or the virtual footprints that are there aren't really there. They're a mirage, because they've hidden them behind different VPNs, and they're hopping across using different programs to hop themselves across the globe. So it can look like, hey, I'm in Europe, or hey, I'm in Budapest. Oh, hey, now I'm in India. Oh, hey, guess what? I've just dropped down to China. Oh no, now. So I mean, depending on the hacker, they can hop around where they want to. And this is why, again, you need hackers to find hackers. And that's what the FBI is trying to do. But it's just tough. It's just cybersecurity is just a different animal. And I mean, think about it. We all got parents. We all got old relatives. How crazy they get when they try and turn on the computer and it doesn't do what they want.
Yep.
Honestly, that's what's happening to the individual that finds a brand new program that they don't know about. And, something gets hacked. You could be, hey, in the military who's worked on COBOL for years. Oh, I know my COBOL programming. But we're in a different era now. And you got to learn something new. And if you're not going to talk to kids, like talking to kids in high school, they have a completely different lingo. But if you're not up on that lingo, you're not going to understand what they're saying. That's programming. That's hacking. It's always evolving. Always evolving. So, yeah, I don't know. I can go on a rant for days on the tech stuff.
Speaking of that and everything, and then we'll get to some other things, including something that Lee brought up along those lines. But one of the things, I had the privilege yesterday of talking to a gentleman on one of the shows that I hosted, comes from that world. He actually had worked in business leadership and definitely had worked in a couple of different companies. He worked for Google, Disney, a couple of other things. Jacoby, you get a kick out of this. He actually had the opportunity to do some work when he was first getting into business as a ranger, a power ranger, but he opted out of that job because he was feeling a little overwhelmed, I guess is the best description, and everything. So he actually wound up doing a lot of other jobs for Disney, Google, and a number of other major companies, including, I think, Fox, and all along those lines. But one of the points that he brought up, which I had forgotten and not thought about, was that we talk about AI as if it's something new. But apparently AI has been around actually since the 40s. Is a point that he brought up, but it's something that we act as if it's new, but it was featured even in some early science fiction and some early other things. But the government, the different agencies, and even individuals have been working in AI. I want to say he said since the 40s, but I don't want to be totally incorrect if that is not what it was. But it definitely sounded like he said it was multiple decades, and we act like it's something that just popped up out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's been out there forever. It really has. I mean, take gaming for example.
Right, and he came out of the gaming world because he'd also worked for what's the major gaming company? Electronic Arts.
Yeah, I mean, so for example, if you play a video game, if you're playing any video game you can think of, there are what's called NPCs, non-playable characters. And those non-playable characters, what are they doing? They're doing a set of programs based on what you do. What is AI? The same thing. It learns what you've done and it responds to what you're doing.
Yeah.
So in its most simplest form, I mean, yeah, it's a lot more complex than that, but in its most simplest form, all it's doing is responding based on what information that it's given. And it's doing it is computer generated. So if you're playing Pong and that little bar is moving up to track the ball that you just hit, what is it reading? Basically the information that it's given on the trajectory that you've hit the ball off the wall. So it's trying to respond. What does AI do? What information you feed it is trying to kick back out an answer that sounds realistic. So yeah, AI has been around for a very long time. We just don't think of it as AI. We think of it just as just there. I mean, heck, when you used to go to CVS and CVS gave you those long receipts, curtain rod long receipts that had all the stuff to suggest that you purchased based on what? Based on what you just purchased. That's AI.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. Hey, Lee had brought up something. I'm going to change the topic just slightly and everything, but he brought up something that I know there's probably some thoughts that people are going around. There were people that were floating the Michelle Obama election and all along those lines and all in that space, and having served on a board that you could work for 2 terms and then you had to go off and then you could come back for a 3rd term. That is what some people, I guess, are floating for President Obama, that because there are folks that are dissatisfied with Biden and think that there needs to be a viable option, and all along those lines that there are some people that saying that maybe we should be looking at the Obama election as a possibility as well. So I'm going to bring in Nick Valveda, who's here, and he is a lawyer. So definitely all along those lines. What is your thoughts about this? Because there are some people, and Lee brought this up in an article, that I guess are floating the notion of, hey, if Trump can come back and run a 2nd term after having lost one, maybe Obama could come back as well. So I guess there are some people that are floating this notion. Is this a realistic notion? Does the Constitution allow it? What's up with this notion? Because there is definitely some folks, I guess, that are saying, hey, I kind of like Obama when he was in office, and maybe we can bring him back, and all in that space. So there are folks that are dissatisfied with Biden. We know RFK's crowd is there, and I think there are a couple of other folks that are contemplating running or are in the hunt and all in that space. But is it a possibility? Could we have a 3rd person? I told you I served on a board that literally, if I wanted to, I think I'm past that year or 2 tenure, I could go back to the Carolina Theater if I wanted to, because you have to have a mandatory time off, and then you can have a 3rd term. And there are others that have that idea as well. So is this a possibility? Is it even constitutionally allowed?
Anything's possible, but it's highly unlikely that that'll take place. I mean, can you imagine Clinton, Obama running again? Okay, how about George Bush and Jimmy Carter? I mean, the thing is, it's highly improbable that anything like that's going to take place. So,
Mark, it doesn't have to take place. Did you hear the clip, Obama's quote, the actual quote from Obama?
I didn't hear the actual quote.
It's worthwhile to hear. It's him saying he doesn't mind sitting in the basement in sweats, calling the shots, and have somebody else with an earpiece and, just parroting his words. These are his words, not mine. It's a direct quote.
Well, whatever.
It's a worthwhile interview.
Trump said he didn't mind sitting in the basement of a prison and telling people what to do. I mean, come on.
That one I didn't hear.
It's American politics, so anything can happen. But what's more likely to happen as we're heading there right now? Trump winning the Republican nomination. and a Trump and Biden rematch, because the Democrats have put up nobody, unless you call Robert F. Kennedy Jr. a somebody, which he's getting no traction at all. So, well, with that, it looks like we're going to get to do another Trump Biden rematch. And that's going to be really exciting, like not. But actually, it will be, because Trump makes everything exciting. He's a drama king, you know.
Nick, the DNC said they're not running any debates with Biden in the primaries. Do you think they'll run in the general?
Maybe. You know, it'd be interesting to see if they have. Remember, they're not really debates. They're really, you know, anybody who's done debating knows those aren't debates. Those are really, what do you call it? Advertisements for your whatever you're doing, and that's really about it. But we'll see, because Trump says he's not going to go do the debates as long as he has a big lead. So we may see no Republican debates. Biden's not going to be debating. So all you're going to do is hear the garbage that you hear through media, and they'll elect the president again, like they always do. You know, voters. I don't know. You know, voters don't mean much in the election. The third party candidate, here, because there's a core Democratic base, a core Republican base, and then there's the fringe independents. Even if they run, they'll grab the fringe independents. They won't grab the core bases, and they won't win. So I agree with Jacoby. Jacoby's shaking their head. They're spoilers for somebody, and both parties will say they spoiled us. Whoever loses will say they're spoilers. But generally what happens, there's your fringe Democrats. They're never going to go away. I'll never vote Republican. The fringe Republicans, I'll never vote Democrat. And the people that elect the president are those fringe voters. Okay, they're the ones actually elected. It's not the Democrats or Republicans, because you already know where they're going to vote. So everybody tries to sway that independent vote their way. And if the third party comes in and they swipe the independent vote, then it's going to be up for grabs. It'll make a very interesting election, I think.
Hey, but Nick, along those same lines, there already, because I think it was 2 days ago, might have been on Sunday, today being Tuesday, that Representative Dean Phillips says he doesn't know whether he's going to be running for president. He's a Democrat from Minnesota, but he is calling on other Democrats to jump in the race because the Democrats and the country needs competition. That's his quote, not mine.
Yeah.
He's definitely saying that he would, that like most voters, he wants more candidates to challenge President Biden for the 2024 Democratic presidential nomination. And as far as potential candidates, he says they know who you are. My call is those who are well positioned, well prepared, have good character and competency. They know who they are to jump in. So he didn't name who they were, but maybe he's got some ideas of folks. Maybe it's the Obamas, everybody. But he's definitely saying that there needs to be competition in that side. And, he definitely represents a state that is known for its independence. Like I said, they elected Jesse Ventura to be their governor, which was a major, well-known wrestler and everything. So they definitely have a streak of independence in that particular area of the country and all along those lines. So is he got a leg to stand on in this thought that there needs to be at least some other people that are running, even if they don't necessarily stand a chance of winning?
They should. I mean, and part of the reason that they should do it, Mark, is to prepare for the next election 4 years afterwards, in 2030 or 2028, whenever the next election is. The real reason they should run is to get name recognition and to build a base for the election after Biden's gone. See, this is one of the problems the Democratic Party has. They're not grooming successors properly, because there are no successors. In other words, it's old man or bust. When it's old man or bust, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. These other people do need to step in, because to win, you need an organization, you need name recognition, and you need money. If you run, you'll start acquiring some of those talents to become the next president. If you just let Biden do this, then it's a one-man show. And the Republicans, one good thing they do is they do have other candidates. What gets me is why the party won't switch to one of those other candidates that are very viable.
It's because of that base. That base is so stuck on Trump. If you look at every one of those candidates that are running, from Ramaswamy all the way down to Tim Scott to everybody. Everybody is still trying to cater to that MAGA base.
Yeah, but the thing is, Jatovi, okay, Nikki Haley, when you put her against Biden, may win, and so would Burgum, and they have good candidates out there that should be getting some airtime, and everything's Trump.
I completely agree that other candidates should be there from Nikki Haley and so on and so forth to give a better option. And I still dislike their politics, but I think it would be better for the Republican Party because it could bring them more towards the middle. But I mean, take Chris
more towards sanity.
Exactly. Take Chris Christie, for example.
Yeah, Chris Christie.
Any Republican that has criticized or said anything bad about Trump is losing the election by a landslide. They're not getting any of that MAGA base. And that is what that Republican candidate is catering to. So they're doing everything. And what they don't realize when they're catering to that MAGA base, all they're doing is doing a TV ad for Trump. Yeah. And it's crazy. Like Ramaswamy is talking about, well, I won't say anything bad about Trump. And, Trump has been all done wrong. And Trump, I will pardon him on the first day because Trump does. Well, why don't we just elect Trump then if you're going to say Trump is all innocent and Trump this and Trump that? Ron DeSantis, hey, well, I'm going to do better than Trump because Trump did good, but I'm going to do even further than what Trump did. So why are you telling me that you're going to go further than Trump? Why don't I just hire Trump then? So all they're doing is just ads for Trump to keep that base, and they don't realize that. They're not separating themselves, and they can't get out of that because you go like Chris Christie and criticize Trump, you barely make the debate stage.
Yeah, to tell you on the flip side of that, and I was wondering because Nick brings up a very valid point. There are rising stars in the Republican Party, whether we are fans of them or not. I've actually heard some good things as Nick has and others about Nikki Haley and definitely about some of the entrepreneurs and all along those lines. But when people ask me, after the Biden administration, who's the next in line, I think of people like Cory Booker, and he has a lot of baggage behind him. I think of people that are in there, including Hakeem Jeffries, that is a rising star, but I don't know that he has necessarily positioned himself for a run. And I think of some other mayors and other places, but I don't see them really being pushed yet or being positioned in a way to run even for 2028. So if somebody would ask me, after the next election, whoever is in the presidency, who's going to be the Democratic candidate, I couldn't tell you because, like I said, there are some folks that I have seen that have presidential qualities, but I don't know that they have positioned themselves to make that run.
Yeah, they haven't. Nick is spot on. The Democrat Party, the big flaw that they have is they never set up a successor. They never market the next person that should be. For example, if you take, I cannot remember that rep's name right now, but there's a rep out of Florida. The guy who's he's been just destroying people all on all the Senate, the House hearings and stuff, just calling them out and stuff. He'd be a great guy. Heck, Pete Buttigieg, in all honesty, if they market him correctly, he'd be a great successor for the stuff, the way he's had to handle every issue that he had to deal with. But they're not going to market him because, again, if you market anybody other than Biden right now, then Biden is going to lose the election bad.
Oh, yeah, and you're considered a traitor to the Republican Party.
Yeah, considered a traitor to whichever party. But Nick, along the same lines, I'm going to come back to Pete Buttigieg and everything, because I've had this conversation with a couple of people and everything. Is the country in the 21st century? I would hope that they are. I would hope that we have advanced enough and everything. It even comes down to Vivek and everything. Is the country as an overall whole, I'm not talking about just pockets of the country, but as an overall whole, ready to elect either somebody that is out of the LGBTQIA community, that is somebody that is Asian, or even a woman? Because I've heard some people that have told me that they are not necessarily convinced that the country as a whole is ready to elect a woman president, even though that we know that there have been women leaders in other parts of the world as well. But there are a lot of people that are stuck on what they have got used to and on the norm of what they have got used to, and that they are pushing against some of those things and everything in that space. Like I said, I hope that in the 21st century, we have moved past some of these dividing factors and would be looking at people's policies and things along those lines. But I do think that there is a base out there that has, to your thoughts around the MAGA base, that are very uncomfortable around certain communities. And I know we elected a person out of the minority community when we elected Obama, but there are still folks out there that are saying that they don't know whether they're ready to elect some of those categories, and particularly those out of the LGBTQIA community and everything. But what are your thoughts about that? Because that's something that I've had conversations with friends of mine about, and some of them have explained some concerns about the not so much themselves, but the overall public.
Yeah, probably not at this point in time. In other words, the thing is, things may change as time goes by, Mark. But let's face it, we've never had a woman president, which is really weird. Hillary was the best shot. She did win the majority of the votes, but had problems in obviously the Electoral College. Mm-hmm. And see, the problem with Pete Buttigieg, because I've listened to him, the guy's really sharp, is he won't win the Electoral College, and it'll all be about LGBTQ rights. It won't be about the issues. But that's the problem that we're seeing with Trump and Biden. It's all going to be about them and their personality. No one discusses the issues. The issues are like, forget it. We don't really care about the issues. We just want to listen to their personality. And so we have as a personality contest more than an election. Yeah, Sasha.
Yeah, okay. I'm wondering again. I live in Canada, so things are very different there. I'm wondering that Biden, okay, I understand that most Americans don't want to see the repeat of Biden-Trump election final. Okay, so Biden is there simply because he's incumbent, he's the president. Okay, so it goes without saying that he's going to participate in the next election. Now, with Trump's situation is different. The Trump phenomena is because of their so-called base, which is about, say, 30% of total electorate of the United States. And regardless of what anyone says or does or writes or do whatever, that base, it seems to me, like even Americans, even like all yourself guys on the panel, you believe that this kind of a monolith that simply cannot be changed, adjusted, or simply disappear. What is kind of a phenomena is that there is a base, and we listen about the base since 2016. There is a base, and Trump lost and impeached, and now all this proceedings against him or so on, and it's still a base, it's still 30%, and it's not going to go either left or right. But one day Trump will die, believe it or not, as much as he's popular and great and but he'll just simply die. And then what's happened to the base? Are they going to still be the base and they will elect? So there will be two elections. Number one, a base will elect its representative, and then the total overall election. That base will dictate to other 70% of the population of the U.S. who is going to president, what is the agenda, and so on. What is a base? Explain, please, to me.
Sasha, well, one thing, the voter blocks have been out there for a number of years. That's really all that the base that we're talking about is. And there have been different voter blocks that are out there. There have been voter blocks and people that have looked at different minority communities as a voter block and a number of other things that have been out there. I don't know, historically speaking, and those that are more historically astute than even myself can say whether there have been a voter block that is as strong as what the Trump empire has created with their base. And a lot of them are very diehard. They will not ever change. You can't move their needle too far away from being supportive of him, and there are some very distinct diehards. I would agree that there are some that have even moved away from that base because they have gotten frustrated to what Nick was talking about by the circus, and they don't necessarily always agree with his standpoint. So I would say that the base has maybe shrunken a little bit and all along those lines. But you do bring up an interesting point, and I don't know the answer to that. It's kind of like what we were talking about with the Democratic Party, because Trump is not a young gentleman and everything. And if there is a base, we saw that even with some of the Southern organizations and Southern voter blocs, that I don't know that there is a mass appeal, somebody that has the same kind of, whether we like him or not, charisma that Trump has, that would be able to step into that void. So should Trump, move off, maybe he goes to Russia and hangs out with his buddy Putin. And yes, I'm being slightly sarcastic with that and everything, but or maybe he does, as you just say, pass away. The ones that are the spokesperson or the spokespeople for his base, they are I hate to use this term, but in a lot of ways they are very toxic and all in that space. And I don't know that they have the mass appeal that, say, Trump does. I don't know that Marjorie Taylor Greene could step into that void. I don't know that even Rick out of Texas could step into that void as well. But what is our thoughts? Because just like the Democrats had that problem, I would argue that the MAGA community had that problem as well. I don't know that they've groomed any leadership to step into his void should he step off, to Sasha's point.
I mean, I think this gets back to what Nick was talking about. I mean, basically, the Republican Party has a better, they just do it better in terms of messaging and wrapping their people around a personality that caters to their base the most. So, for example, if Trump were to have passed on, and the person that would fall into that line right now would be DeSantis, the way that he's talking. If you notice how that base kind of follows exactly what Mark's talking about, that personality, but also some of the policies that they are pushing. And so that and this happened, what you're talking about with Obama, it happened because there was a vacuum in the Democrat Party after the 8 years of Obama. There was nobody to fill that void. And the only person that actually could speak eloquently that the Democrat Party really liked was either Cory Booker, but then the policies, many of those Democrats that felt disenfranchised fell in love with Bernie Sanders and wanted that whole Bernie style. But with the Republican Party, the new group or that new base that was brought in with Trump and Sasha, I mean, Shaq points it out in the chat that, yeah, it happened. The bases are similar to how it happens in Canada, the political base blocks in Canada, and what Mark just pointed out as well. But the base that Trump brought in, that is your diehard, consider me conservative, consider me Republican now base. That is that MAGA wing that comes out of the woodworks and only came out of the woodworks for Trump. And that's why, your DeSantis would be your next person in line if he lasts, because that MAGA base likes DeSantis based off what they've said from those exit polls coming out of those different conventions where, hey, I like him, but there's Trump. So they'll vote for Trump, but then, if he disappears.
I would like to address it. There are a lot of comparison about this situation with MAGA block or base, let's put it this way, and situation in Canada. It's entirely different situation. In Canada, there are 3 parties, and each one has its own agenda or so on. I'm not going to go into it, except that a couple of years ago or so, the Liberal Party, which is equivalent of Democratic Party in the United States, Liberal Party of Canada, and NDP, which is New Democratic Party, which is somewhat different element, but they're close to liberals. So they made a so-called bloc that they are going to vote together or so on. But again, if the base in the United States would be some kind of its own party, and that party wants so and so and such, and that's what they are. That's one thing. But what's happening is that they're hiding behind a Republican facade. So here's a Republican Party, and yet there is a kind of a base which not entirely Republican creature. It's a creature on itself. It's a Trump's creature, independent of Republican Party and the Democrats or so on. So this is kind of a creature which exists on its own. That's all.
So yes, what you're saying is spot on. And I think there was a communication where we were talking about two different things in a sense. Yeah, they are hiding behind the facade of the Republican Party, but in the U.S. we have that two-party system, and those two parties have the financial backing. Those two parties have the money, and that independent is where the disenfranchised Democrats and the disenfranchised Republicans decide they go to. They say, okay, well, we're not going to be Republican, we're not going to be Democrat, we're going to be independent. So those parties still recruited, both Democrats recruited and tried to fill that void that was taken out by those independents that left the party and became disenfranchised. So you had different individuals. The Burning Bros aren't really Democrats. They consider themselves progressives in a different way. And you have other individuals that shift in under that whole party. Same thing in the Republican Party, that MAGA wing. There are individuals in that MAGA party, not saying that they are all this way, but there are individuals in that MAGA party that were never, ever, ever, ever going to vote for anybody. They would always stay home. But because of the things and the megaphone that Trump gave them, they came into that party and hid up under, yes, the Republican Party, and have become to corrupt that party itself. So I see what you're saying. And yeah, so they shift in the bases. The Republicans are trying to cater to particular people to bring into that fold and say, hey, we're Republicans, we're going to vote for you. Same thing with the Democrat Party.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but it's Toby and definitely Sasha. One of the things that I heard that Shaquille brought up in the chat, and I was wondering if we've seen this and if we could see it, but one of the things that I would like to have happen, but I don't know that we have it happen enough, is that it seems to me that when you come to whoever is elected, when you look at the cabinet should be, to one of Lee's points in the past, whoever is best for the job. So if you've got the person that is going to be the best health person or the best person to run, say, the FCC or something, that they should come regardless of party. It should be whoever the best person is for that job and all along those lines. But I do know from my understanding that a lot of times that is not what happens with the cabinet positions. If the Republicans come in, they bring a lot of Republicans to those cabinet positions. If the Democrats come in, they bring a lot of Democrats to those cabinet positions. So could we be looking at maybe even on the cabinet level ways to bring people in from the different parties and all along those lines? Because that is something that I heard Shaquille mentioned, and I wish that would happen more of, is that even after whoever is elected, that we look at people that are going to do those jobs, whatever those jobs are, because there are hundreds, and I think Lee has even brought this up, thousands and maybe even too many thousands of government jobs, government agencies, and government things in that space and everything. And some of them may be doing duplicate jobs. They may be kind of doing the same job over and over and all along those lines. But I see Shaquille has joined us, and I don't know if he has any thoughts about this, because I do think that sometimes we need to have people that are actually engaged in being part of the governance and going past those party lines, particularly on some of those cabinet levels. So I did bring up your quote, Shaquille.
No,
have any thoughts?
No one party has all the answers.
Yeah.
Don't
No one
forget,
party has all the answers, but part of the reason, you have to look at the reason behind the MAGA people, okay? The government, see, first of all, they live in the rural areas of the United States generally. And then generally, our wonderful U.S. government is intrusive, whether they like to consider themselves or not. Because right now I'm dealing with a couple government agencies that are intrusive into retirement plans. They shouldn't be there. They shouldn't be doing this stuff, but they do. And after a while, you become anti-government. I'm sorry. I mean, and so you look for the party that's willing to push the government out of people's lives, and that becomes the MAGA group. And the more they shove themselves into people's lives, the more you become a Republican. So the MAGA group has a definite base that's not going away. And a lot of it deals with because we have a bloated US government that has intrusive government policies. Now, some of them are correct, but they do become intrusive. And unfortunately, I'm dealing right now with a big, bloated, Joe Biden sponsored government agency that's very intrusive. And it's very difficult. You can't get rid of them. They're like a bad disease. So after a while, you throw up your hands and you vote for Trump. Period. The end. So whether everybody here likes Biden and they think all his policies are good, Trump may be elected again. Because
Nick, what's the logic at the other side? What's the logic of those who want a big bloated government?
I don't think
what's the
everybody.
problem with bloated government?
No, what's the logic of those who want that? You explain the logic of those who don't want
the
it.
ones that want it. Okay. The arguments in favor of the bloated government, Lee, are that the government provides more stability and equity. They provide jobs to people, and so the thing is, one person who's very, I don't know if he's Republican or Democrat, told me that basically, in order to live in a civilized society, you need to have rules and lots of them. So he promulgates in our homeowners association hundreds and thousands of rules, which is part of the reason I'm moving. I'm going like the guy got reelected and he can't get enough. Now, his former job, he worked for the military. Okay. And they have a lot of rules. And so the thing is, we got to have a rule of everything. You have to have a rule, which plants are acceptable, which aren't, where to place them, where not. Okay. Now, to some people, Lee, that's okay. They want that organized structure. Okay. I didn't grow up in a military family, even though my parents both did serve in World War I, World War II. The advice to me by my dad was stay away from the military. So I did. I went to law school. All right. Which is, by the way, another group of people that love rules. They're rule mongers. And after a while, if you're living in a place in a rural society or you're living in a place that you have more freedom, you really start objecting to somebody telling you what to do about literally everything, you know? And so they get a pushback. I mean, the good news, I mean, just even look at cars. The good news is they have rules so that not all trash heaps run on the highways. The bad news is that the enforcement can be overburdensome, you know? So it depends on what you like.
I think the question though is misleading in the sense that I don't think people want bloated government. Government can be bloated. For example, it's all in somebody's perception on where they think it's bloated, more so than I think people want bloated government. For example, in business, we'll take the Democrat Party, want regulations on particular areas so they feel, just as Nick is saying, that it's okay and it's protecting particular parts. The Republican Party, for the most part, see those same rules as being quote unquote bloated. However, they want rules and restrictions on people that you can love or people that you can marry or people or books that you can read. So why is one not bloated, but one is? It's in the person's mindset.
It's inconsistent.
Yeah, so you can't say that this isn't bloated.
It's definitely inconsistent.
So okay. It's basically where
both parties are guilty of inconsistencies.
I completely
the Democrats go, we're favor of life. We don't want to hurt the immigrants. Killing people like that is horrible. Then they allow abortions, which are unborn children getting killed. And I go,
well, we can't say that. No. Well, I got to stop you on abortions. That's a whole nother topic that we can debate.
It is a whole nother topic. And even though I'm anti-abortion, I'm not anti-abortion on everything. Because the thing is, there's certain situations and one woman was explaining that my kids were going to be born basically stillborn, okay? Which means they're going to be born dead if she's lucky, or they're going to be born, and she was denied an abortion. I'm going like, what? So the thing is, it really, there are some situations that abortions are medically necessary. And so when you put a hard, fast rule, 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 12, whatever, those hard, fast rules really aren't good even for a person who's pro-life. I mean, really. So
The Republicans have not suggested such a
Very
thing, so don't.
Actually, Republicans have wanted a federal ban on all abortions. That's what Pence has
That's not-
said.
That's
That-
not what the Republicans were trying
That
to
is-
achieve at all.
it
They
is-
never said, okay, all right, you're right, Chevy, absolutely. That's what they were trying to do. Absolutely.
yeah, the thing is, since it's a situational issue, that's one reason leaving it to medical doctors may be the best thing to do. That's what it used to be years ago. In other words, abortions were between the patient and the medical doctor, rather than the government being involved. The government. This is just another government intrusion.
And what the interesting part about that is, remember when the ACA was coming up, people were complaining, hey, we don't want the government involved in our healthcare decisions. But then
I have to go to another show. I think
I was
Russia.
going to say it's time to wrap up because definitely
Oh, yeah,
Sasha's got to get to that other show as well because it's time for Ukraine, Russia, and China. And his guests are actually on the other show because I did see that Ivan is over there from Kyiv, and definitely there are others that are there as well, including Jonathan Lockhart. So there would definitely be some great conversation about that and all along those lines. So looking forward to a great show in that space, and they should be getting ready to start in a very few minutes and all along those lines. So this was a interesting discussion, and we may continue some of these discussion points, including those around abortion, the election, and a number of other things on tomorrow. But right now it's time for us to get on out of here because we have Ukraine, Russia, and China coming on the other side. So we're going to get on out of here and see about that show that is coming up at exactly 11 o'clock. And we also have a show with Jacqueline Jimenez, which is Newsworthy Stories, and she's got a author coming at 12 o'clock because that's actually been uploaded. So I already know what that show is about. So that'll be coming up at noon. So time for us to get on out of here. Lee, Shaquille, Jacoby, everybody else, I've had a good time with this conversation, and we'll reconvene on tomorrow and have some more great conversation as well. So
Take care,
time
Toby.
to get on out of here.
Have a good one, Lee.